Welcome to another episode of my live stream, my journey to the Trinity. And I'm happy that you could be with me today. And talk a little to who was responding to a video I made about, let me see, is it this one? Okay, it's this verse, which is, it's in the Quran, it's chapter 9, verse 31. And it's Surah At-Tawbah, 31. It says, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. And if you translate this verse literally, it says they took their rabbis and monks as lords in place of, and the implication of this is that God and Christ are the lords. But because this verse is so obviously claiming that Jesus is equal to God, it's putting Jesus on a par equal to God. Quite often, when they translate it. I'll show you the different translations because they translate it in different ways. But I wanted to play for you some of the things that my cousin said. Let me just play for you some of his comments about what I said. So,
أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ابن مريم. هو الآية بتقول اتخذوا الأحبار والرهبان أرباب من دون الله. المسيح معطوفة على أحبار ورهبان. بعدين وفي الآية شو بتقول؟
Okay, let me just tell you what he said there. He's saying that when it says Christ, that Christ is in the group with the rabbis and monks. So what he is saying is that this verse, I don't know if you don't read Arabic, it doesn't make sense. But what he's saying is that it says they took their rabbis and monks and Jesus as lords in place of God. But that's not what the verse says. That's not what the verse says. And so, but let's go ahead and listen to what he said. That's what he just said in Arabic. I don't know if you heard it, but if you heard it, that's what he said. So.
بقول المسيح ابن مريم، صح؟ ليش إذا هو قصده المسيح إنه هو الله كان المسيح ابني؟ ليش؟
Okay, this is somebody says. He says, and it says, well, when you continue the verse, it says they took their monks and rabbis as lords in place of God and Jesus, the Son of Mary. And he's saying, why didn't God say Jesus, my son, instead of the Son of Mary? Well, that's kind of a moot point. It doesn't change the meaning of the verse at all. And that's in the Quran. Jesus is very often called Jesus, or Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus the son of Mary. So that's not really a relevant point. It doesn't change anything. So anyway, but I wanted to let's go ahead and hear some more of what he said.
كان المسيح ابن مريم. وبعدين شو بقول؟ وما أمروا، شوف، وما أمروا، كلهم هذول وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا إلها. هذه إلها واحد مذكر مفرد، مش إله يعني جمع، مش أكثر من إله واحد. بعدين بقول لك إلها واحدا يعني إلها واحدا، مش آلهة يا واحد. صح إنك كذاب، وبتحداك احكي كلها فسرها قدامهم عشان توري إنك كذاب.
Okay, and so now he's going into the second part of the verse where it does say that they're commanded to worship one God. Again, that's completely in agreement. We agree with you. You're only supposed to worship one God. There is only one God. There is only one God. And Moses said there's only one God. David said there's only one God. Abraham said there's only one God. Solomon said there's only one God. Jesus said there's only one God. Paul said there's only one God. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, James, Jude, all of them said there's only one God. Nobody believes in more than one God. Christians believe in one God, revealed in three persons, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And this is the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, Ithaluthu Aqdas. And in the Quran, you find them. You find in Quran that there is the Trinity, especially chapter 4, verse 171, that says, Isa ibn Maryam, Rasulallah, kalimatahu alqaha la Maryam wa ruh minhu. So you have Allah, kalimatahu wa ruh. That's the Trinity, the God, the Word, and the Spirit. They're in the Quran. And this verse right here shows that Jesus is equal to God because it puts Jesus on a par with God. And let's look at some of the translations, how they translate it, because you know I could call this the pretzel show again, because this one gets people twisted up into pretzels because they don't know how to translate it. Let's look at how Muslim translators into English have translated it. And I'm going to tell you right now that one of them does translate it correctly, almost. He adds a comma, but makes it. Look at how. Now we're just okay. This is Sahih International. They have taken their scholars. Okay, so instead of rabbis, they say scholars, ahbarhum, and monks as lords besides Allah, and the Messiah, the son of Mary. And also the Messiah, the son of Mary. So they added that word also. Now, this is the Sahih International version. Now, you know what they're doing there? They're trying to take which is what my cousin said, that Messiah goes back to the group rabbis and monks instead of the group in a group with Allah, with God. Okay, then Pickthall. They have taken as lords beside Allah. I mean, this completely changes, completely reverses it. They have taken as lords besides Allah their rabbis and their monks and the Messiah, son of Mary. Completely changes it. Pickthall usually is a pretty decent translation. This is completely different than what the Arabic says. This is completely different than what the Arabic says. Okay, Yusuf Ali. They take their priests and their anchorites to be their lords in derogation of Allah, and they take as their Lord Christ, the son of Mary. It doesn't say that in Arabic. You know what they're doing is they're changing the Quran. And you know what? They should get angry at these guys. They should get angry at these guys because these guys are the ones who biharrifu. These are the guys who are changing what the Quran clearly says. Okay, and then there's the Shakir. They have taken their doctors of law and their monks as lords besides Allah, and also the Messiah, the son of Mary. And now you see that's really almost correct, but they added the word also, trying to put Jesus in the group with doctors of Allah and monks, not with God. Then Muhammad Sarwar, they unconditionally obeyed the rabbis and monks and worshiped the Messiah, the son of Mary, as they should have obeyed God. It has absolutely no connection to what it has. No, in fact, they even put a period after this. They completely, this has nothing to do with what the Arabic says. They completely changed it. Then Muhsin Khan, they, the Jews and Christians, took their rabbis and monks to be their lords besides Allah, by obeying them in things that they made lawful or unlawful according to their own desires without being ordered by Allah. And they also took their Lord as their Lord, Messiah, the son of Mary. Again, he added more words than the original sentence originally has. Now, this guy, Arbery, this guy almost says it like it is, but he adds a comma to try to you know, I'm serious. These guys get twisted into pretzels with this verse. They get twisted into pretzels with this verse because they don't want to acknowledge what it clearly says. It says they have taken their rabbis and monks as lords apart from God and the Messiah. That's Mary's son. That's correct. Okay, but he put commas on it because you know, he's trying to return Messiah to be in the group with the rabbis and monks in place, but you know, Arbery almost leaves it the way it really is, which is they have taken their rabbis and monks as lords apart from God and the Messiah, which puts God and the Messiah in the same category. Okay. Okay, great. Great. Brother Ray, hopefully will be with us on Sunday, and we're going to be talking about abrogation, which is a very good subject to talk about. So anyway, so, this verse is so clear. It's so obvious what it's saying. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. They took their rabbis and monks as lords in place of God and Christ. Now, the meaning of this verse is that God and Christ are the Lord. That God and Christ are the Lord. Arbabin, it's in Jama, it's plural. But I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you in English, just kind of give you in English a kind of an understanding of the situation of this verse. And so I wrote other sentences that have kind of the sentence structure of this verse, just so that you kind of understand. Because if you're in English, you may not understand exactly the significance of this verse. Let me just give you examples of what this verse in English, using other sentences with the same sentence structure as this verse of the Quran, and why it's so significant. Okay, this is an example. They took Churchill and Mussolini as U.S. presidents instead of Lincoln and Washington. They took Churchill. Now everybody knows Churchill. He was the prime minister of England, and everybody knows Mussolini. He was the prime minister of Italy. They took Churchill and Mussolini as U.S. presidents instead of Lincoln and Washington. Now, it's very clear from this, Lincoln and Washington are in a group together. Churchill and Mussolini are in a group together. And the key word is U.S. presidents. And they're saying, so which one is the U.S. president? Churchill and Mussolini? It says they took Churchill and Mussolini as U.S. presidents instead of Lincoln and Washington. Now, we know Lincoln and Washington were U.S. presidents. So those two words, Lincoln and Washington, go back to presidents. Okay? So this is how that verse, it's a similar sentence structure as that verse in the Quran. Hi, Nasir. Hada Arabi yaluh. He's saying that because it's Arabic, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's saying the same thing. Yaluh. La tafsir la hek. Hatta bil Ispanoli. He's saying even in Spanish. You know what? This verse, I'm sorry, you get yourself twisted into a pretzel. I put the pretzel because this one gets you into a pretzel. This one gets you into a pretzel. If you just look at the words in Arabic, it is so clear. For instance, this is another example of a sentence using that sentence structure in this verse. They took apples and oranges as grain in place of wheat and rye. Now, we know that wheat and rye are grain. We know that apples and oranges are not grain. So the group wheat and rye refers back to grain. And apples and orange, but they took apples and oranges as grain in place of wheat and rye. But we know that wheat and rye are together because they are both grain and they refer back to grain. Let's look at another example. Now I'm using the sentence structure of this verse. Okay, I'm using the sentence structure of this verse in the Quran to describe. I'm trying to explain it in English. That's why I'm writing these sentences. I'm not comparing God to rye or comparing God to any of these things. What I'm doing is putting the sentence structure so you understand the sentence structure. So when you talk to Muslims, you can explain to them, because this is the way the verse is in the Quran. And I know they're going to try to say that it's not this way. And I'm going to show you sentences in English the way they want to make it, the way they want to say it. But this is the way it says it. This is the way the sentence is in the Quran. And it says, they took glass and plastic as jewels in place of diamonds and rubies. So they took glass and plastic as jewels in place of diamonds and rubies. Now we know that diamonds and rubies are jewels. Diamonds and rubies are jewels. So we know that the word diamonds and rubies goes back to jewels because diamonds and rubies are jewels. We know that glass and plastic are not jewels. So we know that the words diamonds and rubies refers back to jewels. And we know that glass and plastic are not jewels. So glass and plastic, which are not jewels, are in a group. Diamonds and rubies, which are jewels, are in a group. So you got two groups. You got glass and plastic, you got diamonds and rubies. And it refers back to the word jewels. And go back in the Quran, what does the word says? اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا. They took their rabbis and monks as lords in place of God and Christ. That's how it's written in the Quran. And it's like this. So I know I'm going to get slaughtered for this. I know they're going to just make so much fun of me, but try to understand. I'm not comparing God to jewels. I'm not comparing God to glass. I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is I'm describing the sentence structure of this verse. The sentence structure of the verse. And so I'm really going to get slaughtered for this one, I know. They took hamburgers and French fries as dessert in place of cake and pie. Now, we know cake and pie are desserts. We know that hamburgers and French fries are not desserts. So hamburgers and French fries are in a group. Cake and pie are in a group. And cake and pie refers to the dessert. It goes back to dessert. Cake and pie are dessert. Hamburgers and French fries are not dessert. Rabbis and monks are not lords. God and Christ are lords. They took rabbis and monks as lords in place of God and Christ. God and Christ are lords, are in a group together. Monks and rabbis are in a group together. They took wood and hay as metals in place of gold and silver. They took wood and hay as metals in place of gold and silver. They took wood and hay as metals. Now we know that wood and hay are not metals. We know that wood and hay are not metals, but they took as wood and hay as metals in place of gold and silver. We know gold and silver are in a group together. Those are metals. Gold and silver are metals. That we know that wood and hay are not metals. So wood and hay, which are not metals, are in a group. Gold and silver, which are metals, are in a group. And the one that refers back to metals, they took wood and hay as metals in place of gold and silver. اتخذوا رهبانهم وأربابهم أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا دون الله والمسيح. They took their monks and rabbis as lords in place of God and Christ. God and Christ are in a group. The monks and rabbis are in a group. And the monks and rabbis are not lords, but God and Christ are lords. And that's what this verse is saying. And so it's like this. They took wood and hay, that would be like the rabbis and monks, as metals. Metals would be like in place of lords, in place of gold and silver, in place of God and Christ. Now, God and Christ are lords. Gold and silver are metal. But wood and hay are not metal. Now, I want to show you, but what... let's look at what my cousin said, and this is also the explanation. If you look at the translations of the Quran, this is what they do. In the translations of the Quran, this is what they do. Let me show it to you. This is what they do, and all of them do it. All of them do it. I just read them to you. I read the translations in English. This one twists them up into a pretzel because they don't know what to do with this verse. And so, but this is the way they translate it. They says, they took glass and plastic and diamonds as jewels in place of rubies. This is how they translate it. So the way that the Quran says it is they took glass and plastic as jewels in place of diamonds and rubies. But the way they translate it is, this is the sentence structure of the way they translate it. They took glass and plastic and diamonds as jewels in place of rubies. You see, they put diamonds in the list, and they put diamonds in the class with glass and plastic instead of in a group with rubies. Diamonds should be with rubies. It should be they took glass and plastic as jewels in place of diamonds and rubies. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا دون Allah والمسيح. Allah والمسيح are in a group, God and Christ are in a group, and the monks and rabbis are in a group. And which one is the Lord's? The monks and rabbis are not Lords, but God and Christ are Lords. That's what the Quran says. Okay, here's another example of how they want, this is how they translate it, even though this is not what the verse says. They took wood, hay, and gold as metals in place of silver. And here the logic is, they're saying that Jesus is in the group with the monks and rabbis, not with God and Christ. And so they're taking God and Christ out of it, and they're putting Jesus into the group with the rabbis and monks. So they took wood, hay, and gold as metals in place of silver. See, that's how they translate it. They twist it. All of them do it. All of them do it, except for Arbery. Arbery, he was pretty honest in his translation. You know, let's look again. Let's look again at how they translate it. Okay, let me go ahead and go back here. Let this go. Okay, let's look again. See, these are the translations in English. And this is also what my cousin said. You know, this is what my cousin said. If you'd like to hear some more of what my cousin says, let's see.
طيب يا لوح ولا عالم ولا مفسر من مفسرين المسلمين كان التفسير الآية اللي بتقول فيه أنت. ليش ما فسروها زيك؟
Okay, this is a very good question. He's saying, you know, not one Arabic translator translated the way you do. Why didn't they translate like? And the reason they don't translate it like me is because their doctrine teaches them to. They injected their doctrine into their translation, and so they're twisting the words to fit their doctrine. They're twisting the words to fit their. You just read it by yourself. If you read Arabic, read the words yourself. Let me see. Is this the right one? No, this is the wrong one. You read it yourself. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. They took their rabbis and monks as lords in place of God and Christ. It's very clear. Monks and rabbis are in a group. God and Christ are in a group. Which one is the Lord's? God and Christ. Now, what's so hard about that? It's not hard. It's very simple. But because they have preconceived their notions when they read it, they don't want to say it. And so my cousin is asking, why didn't anybody translate it the way you do? You know, because their doctrine taught them. And so they're sticking their doctrine into it rather than translating it the way it says it. And let's look again at the way they translate it. And I'm telling you, I know some of this is confusing for some of you, especially if you don't speak Arabic. But even if you speak Arabic, you know, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. They now this is my translation, and it's literal, word for word. They took their rabbis and monks as lords in place of God and Christ. And the big deal about this, for those of you who are listening who don't understand Arabic, is the fact that they put God and Christ in the same category. They are together, and it refers back to the word lords. They took their rabbis and monks as lords in place of God and Christ. And, you know, they can't change. They're not going to change it. They're not going to change. It's going to stay this way because they're not supposed to change the Quran. And this is already in all the Qurans. And so they're not going to change it. And so, you know, let's go ahead and look again at how they tried to twist it. How did they pretzel this thing? How did they try to get it to not say what it very clearly says? They changed. This is how Sahih International. I know I've already done this, but I want you to see that what they've done, there's some manipulation going on here. They have taken their scholars and monks as lords besides Allah. And then look at this long list of and also the Messiah, the son of Mary. Now, you know what? Sahih International, the only thing that I would say that they did wrong here is that they added the word also. You know, they what they need to do is just besides Allah and Messiah, son of Mary. So Sahih International isn't horribly wrong in the way they translate it, but what they're trying to do, and I know this is what they're trying to do because this is what their doctrine is to make Jesus fit in with scholars and monks instead of with God. So let's see, Pickthall, he really messes it up. Pickthall says they have taken as lords besides Allah. So that he's completely rearranged the structure of the sentence to fit the doctrine. They have taken as lords besides Allah their rabbis, their monks, and the Messiah. Completely twists it. Total. Pickthall gets the pretzel prize. Pickthall gets the pretzel prize. This is the pretzel prize of all. He completely twists it. Okay, Yusuf Ali. They take their priests and anchorites to be their lords in derogation of Allah, and they take as their Lord. You know, this is not in the Arabic, but he adds this. And they take as their Lord Christ, the son of Mary. It doesn't say that. The verse doesn't say that. He added that. And I think you guys know what what is supposed to happen to people who add to the Quran. Well, he added that. That's not in the Quran. And they take as their Lord Christ, the son of. Okay. Then Shakir. They have taken their doctors of law and monks for lords besides Allah and also Messiah, son of Mary. And so here he's, again, he did the same thing Sahih International did, which is he added also, because he's trying to put Christ into the group with monks and rabbis instead of with God. But, he also adds a word there, trying to make this verse fit into Muslim doctrine. Okay. Then Muhammad Sarwar, they unconditionally obeyed the rabbis, monks, and worshiped the Messiah, the son of Mary, as they should have obeyed God. Dude, you get 2 pretzels. This guy gets 2 pretzels. This is so off. It's completely not what is in the book. And so if you have the Muhammad Sarwar Quran, this is completely it has nothing to do with the literal translation of the words. They're just adding to it. Muhsin Khan, the Jews and Christians, that's okay because that's who it's referring to, took their rabbis and their monks to be their lords besides Allah. Okay, so far so good, but then he adds this. He adds this, and it's longer than the whole chapter. By obeying them in things which they made lawful and unlawful according to their own desires without being ordered by Allah. None of that is in the book. None of that is in the Quran. And then he adds this. They also took as their Lord Messiah, son of Mary. It doesn't say that. They are twisted. Dude, this guy gets a whole bag of pretzels. Muhsin Khan, you get a whole bag of pretzels. That's twist, multiple twists. Completely. Now, Arbery, he's the closest one to literal translation, word for word translation. He says they have taken their rabbis and monks as lords apart from God and the Messiah, Mary's son. Now, that's exactly what it says, but he added the comma, trying to, make it words that can be removed. When you put comma around a little phrase like that, and the Messiah, it means it could be removed. I think it's called a positive or something like that. I can't remember in English, but it means it's a phrase that can be removed. But it can't be removed in the Quran. And if you go look at the Arabic, there's no commas there. Okay. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. Okay, it's very clear what it says, and it gets them twisted up into pretzels because your own homemade book. Okay, you know what, Firas, find a new hobby. This is really pathetic and embarrassing, Firas. My cousin is telling me that I'm very embarrassing. Get another hobby. So you know what, Rashid. Yes. Firas, why don't you answer me instead of just insulting me? Why don't you answer me? And I know you love me and I love you. Okay, so that's not an issue. Why don't you answer? You know Arabic, you know English. Why don't you tell me what and you answer instead of making fun of me? Because this is a real issue that the Quran is telling you that Jesus is God. The Quran اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. من دون Allah والمسيح. It's saying that the Lords are God and Christ. This is the Quran. Go look in your Quran, chapter 9, verse 31. Chapter 9, verse 31 of the Quran. It's there. Answer rather than insult. Answer me. Give me proof that I'm wrong. Prove that I'm wrong. I'm showing you all of the English translate. We make fun of you because you are Allah. Okay. Okay. You know what? What started this was my cousin Nasir. If we want to hear some more of what he has to say, let's see.
وانت يعني افهم منهم كلهم. طب انت مش عارف تقراها يا زلمه، مش عارف تقرا الايه، بتفسرها زي هيك. يا زلمه صحيح انك كذاب اليوم، فعلا انك كذاب. ولا واحد، روح اسوي جوجل، ولا واحد شيخ ولا معالم اسلامي فسرها بطريقتك هذه الهبله كذا.
He's telling me that I'm a liar and a loh and a blackboard, and he says he's saying not one Islamic scholar has translated it the way you do. You know what, you guys? Well, how do you translate it? How do you translate it? How do you translate it? Forget, you got a brain, and God's gonna hold you accountable for your brain that He gave you on Judgment Day. How did you use your brain? You read it. You read it. Because to me, on my Arabic, I admit it, my Arabic is limited, but this seems as clear as day to me. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. It seems as clear as day what it's saying. They took their rabbis and monks as lords in place of God and Christ. That means that the category God and Christ belongs with lords, but monks and rabbis doesn't belong with lords. And Christ belongs with God category, not the monks and rabbis category. I told you, Allah. So my cousin is going to keep calling me Allah. He says that I'm Allah. I'm a empty board, an idiot, blackboard, empty board. But you know what? You know what you haven't done, Nasir? Nasir, you tell me, you got me a ton of stuff. You got me a ton of stuff, Nasir. Let me play some more of yours.
طب هو لو انه هو رب لما كان ما قال عنه، بعدين وفي الايه شو بتقول؟ هذه الايه توفات الايه بتنفي الحكي تبعك هذا كذب.
Okay, he's saying that the rest of the verse denies this. Denies what? Denies what? He's telling me that the rest of the verse, which talks about worshiping one God, which we totally agree with, denies this. Denies what? Denies these words of the Quran. How many words are there? اتخذوا, one word. أحبارهم, 2 words. Wa, 3 words. رهبانهم, 4 words. Arbaban, 5 words. Min, 6 words. Dun, 7 words. Allah, 8 words. Wa, 9 words. Masih, 10 words. These are 10 words. You're telling me that the rest of the verse denies this? How could the Quran deny Quran? How could the words of the Quran deny the words of the Quran? By the way, you guys, Ray's going to be with me on Sunday. We're going to talk about abrogation. Awesome, awesome subject. So, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. You guys, this is very clear. This is very clear. And you know what? I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna see. Because I know what some of you guys are saying. You're saying, wait a minute. There's so many different Qur'ans. Do all of them say the same thing? Let's look at what all of them say. I'm gonna go look at what all of them say. Dude, I'm too old. Okay. And the last surah to come down, the last surah to come down to Muslims is the Surah At-Tawbah. So this is the last one to come down. This is the last surah that that Muhammad got. Okay, 41. Let me go back. I need to go back to the next page. Okay, let's go back to 31. Okay, this is the Hafs version. The Hafs version. The Hafs version says, okay, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ibn Maryam. This is the Hafs version. See what the Welsh version says. Because they're different, and so you want to make sure that all of them are the same, because some of them are different. You write off At-Tawbah. Okay, Surah At-Tawbah. You see what it says, verse 31. Okay. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ibn Maryam. Okay, so the Welsh version is the same. Let's see the Sha'ab an Asim. Okay, this is an Asim. An Asim. Okay, the very last surah that came to Muhammad was Surah At-Tawbah. So this is the last one that came down, even though in the order of the Quran, it is not the last one. Okay, this is in this one. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ibn Maryam. So on this verse, all of the Qur'ans are the same, because the Qur'ans are different in many places, like the Fatiha and everything. But on this particular verse, all of the Qur'ans say the same thing in Arabic. Al-Anfal. Yunus. Okay, Yunus is 10, so Tawbah would be right before Yunus. Okay, let's see what Tawbah says. Surah At-Tawbah. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ibn Maryam. Okay, so all of these, on this verse, they're all the same. On this verse, they're all the same, which is very interesting. Surah Al-An'am, chapter 6. Okay. You guys, those of you who are making fun of me, bring arguments, bring proof, bring dalil that I'm wrong. Don't just insult me. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ibn Maryam. Okay, this is the Riwayat Khalaf an Hamza. Okay, let's look at all these different Qur'ans. I got so many of them. Jalalain. Let's see what Jalalain says. Now, everybody likes Jalalain. This one is a little bit hard, you guys, because the writing is so small. It's so hard for my eyes to see it. So let's go. This is Fahras Qira'at al-Kasani. Okay, so this is another Quran. Let's see what it says here. Hud. Okay, Tawbah, Surah At-Tawbah. Let's see what it says. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ibn Maryam. So all of these Qur'ans, now I got 7 different Qur'ans here, and there's thousands of differences between them. Thousands of differences between these different Qur'ans. But on this verse, there's no difference. On this verse, they're all the same. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح. And so, this is what it says. And if you have an argument, if you want to prove me wrong, prove me wrong. Bring evidence. Don't just call me, insult me. Bring evidence that I'm wrong. Because this verse in the Quran, chapter 9, verse 31, Surah At-Tawbah, verse 31, puts Jesus on a level with God, in a group with God. اتخذوا أحبارهم The rabbis and monks are in a group. Allah and Christ are in a group. And if this is true, and because a lot of you guys like it when I bring my friend Ray, and he says that if you really believe the Quran clearly shows the central Christian doctrines, namely that Jesus Christ is divine, that Jesus Christ is divine. Now you see it here in this verse very clearly. You see it in this verse very clearly that he is divine. And you also see in chapter 4, verse 171, Isa ibn Maryam, Rasulullah wa kalimatahu alqaha Maryam wa ruh minhu. Jesus Christ, the messenger of Allah, he is the messenger of Allah, the God, and his word proceeded forth from him. Kalimat alqaha Maryam wa ruh minhu, and the Spirit. So you got God, the Word, and the Spirit. So that says that Jesus is divine. Also, and this verse is so clear, it also says that Jesus is the creator. The Quran says very clear that only Allah can create. And yet, the Quran says, chapter 3, Surah Al-Imran, verse 49, that Jesus created. He says, أخلق لكم. He didn't say, أصنع لكم, ولا أشكل لكم, ولا أعمل لكم, ولا, some different verb. He didn't say I make or shape or form or something. No, he says I create. أخلق لكم, أخلق لكم. And so he's the creator, and so he's the creator. He's the creator. And this verse in the Quran, chapter 9, verse 31, you know what? All of the stuff I've heard, all of the stuff I heard from Nasir, from all the others, I've heard a lot of opposition, but I have not heard an explanation that does away with this. I have not heard an explanation from anybody that says that this is not the case, that this verse is saying that Jesus is God, in a category with God. Allah will Masih, Isa ibn Maryam. It's just not there. I haven't heard it. If there is something, somebody tell us. Somebody come tell me. Tell me and I'll stop using this verse. But until you tell me, I'm going to keep using it, because this verse shows that Jesus is God. The same way, chapter 3, verse 55 says that Jesus died. And chapter 5, 117 says Jesus died. Chapter 19, verse 31 says that Jesus died. These verses show that Jesus died and rose again. This verse says that Jesus is God. And the Quran tells you, if you have any question, ask those who have the books before you. You guys, you have to look at what this verse is saying. Nobody has given me an explanation that against what I'm saying, that this verse proves that Jesus is God. This verse in the Quran, chapter 9, verse 31, proves that Jesus is God. So if he's God, if he died for you, if he loves you, which he does, one thing that worries me, one of the reasons I do this is that it seems like every day somebody's dying. Every day somebody, one of my relatives, is dying. And they're going into eternity thinking that Jesus is not divine, thinking that Jesus didn't die for them. Jesus died for you. Jesus is divine. He died for you. Ask him. You need to be ready. Look, none of us know if we have tomorrow. Today could be our last day. You need to be ready to meet him. Say, Jesus, help me. Jesus, forgive me. Jesus, come into my... Jesus, help me. Jesus, forgive me. Jesus, come into my heart. Jesus, help me. Jesus, forgive me. Jesus, come into my heart. He loves you. I love you. Give your life to him before it's too late. Before it's too late. You know, it's like people are dying. It's just like every day you hear of somebody else who died. We love you. Thank you for being with me. And I hope we'll be together again. And I just want to say it over and over again because some people think that I hate you and that I'm doing this because I'm angry. I'm not angry. I love you guys. I'm so I'm so worried. I want you guys to go to heaven. I don't want you guys to go to hell. And Jesus, you know, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. You can't get to God any other way. Why? Because God gave Jesus to take our sins on himself. He took our sins and he died for us. Look at my video yesterday about why Jesus was crucified. Look at my video yesterday why Jesus was crucified. Why was he tortured? Isaiah 53 tells you he was tortured because of us. He was beaten because of me. He died because of us. Come to him before it's too late. Come to Jesus before it's too late. Open your heart. Say, Jesus, help me. Jesus, forgive me. Jesus, come into my heart. Jesus, help me. Jesus, forgive me. Jesus, come into my heart. It doesn't have to be those exact words. It doesn't have to be those exact words, but those are simple words that you can say. And if you say, Jesus, come into, because the Bible says, Jesus says, I'm standing at the door and I'm knocking. I'm knocking. If anybody opens the door, I will come in. He wants to come into your life to be your Lord. Open your heart to him. Say, Jesus, I open my heart to you. He's the one who used to heal the blind. The Quran says he's the creator. It says, akhliq lakum. I create for you a bird. You know, that's a very interesting verse. Chapter 3, verse 49 of the Quran. Surah Al-Imran, 49. Jesus talks about Jesus. It says that he took a clay and he says, akhliq lakum. The words he says, akhliq lakum, means I create for you. I create for you. Nasir is, he's making fun, but he said, Yeshua Sa'idni, Samihni, Ta'al Ta'asha Ma'ai. Come have dinner with me. Say, come into my heart. Udkhul Albi. Udkhul Albi. If you have the right spirit, he will dine with you. He loves you. Okay, my cousin Nasir wants me to play the message. I'm going to go ahead and play it for it because I did this whole video is in response to him. So he's got a new message. Let's see if he's not too bad. If it's not too bad, I'll play it. So
طيب يا لوح، ماني قلت لك 20 مرة وبتشافح يا زلمة. طب وقف في الآية، مش قلت لك؟ مو بقول والمسيح ابن مريم وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا إلها واحد، مش اثنين، مش آلهة، إلها واحد. وشغل الفيديو خليه يسمعوا الناس شو بقول مشان تعرفوا انك كذاب. بعدين بقول إلها واحدا لا إله إلا هو مش هما، هو واحد. سبحانه، مش سبحانهم، سبحانه واحد. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. هذه الآية بتقول هيك. والمسيح، يعني الواو والمسيح الأخرى، اتخذوه رب. بعدين ليش قال المسيح ابن مريم؟
okay. And he's doing the same thing. Udkhul qalbi ya Umar. Nasir, if you said that and you meant it, he will come. He'll never leave you. You know, if you meant it. If you're mocking, that's another issue. But if your heart is open, he will come into your heart. He'll never change you, man. He'll never leave you. He loves you. And my cousin, he's kind of making jokes. It's a shame for you to lie. But if we listen to what he's saying, you know what? Everything he says in this recording, I played it for you, does nothing to invalidate the 10 words. 10 words. اتخذوا. اتخذوا رهبانهم أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح Isa ibn Maryam. 10 words. It does nothing to invalidate the words. It does nothing to invalidate the words. The words are so clear. It's saying that Jesus is God. And so you have to deal with it, Muslims. This is in your book. It's in your Quran. I got all 17 of the Qurans that I have, all the 17 different Qurans I have. Warshu Hafzu Tusiduri Kalun Khalafu Asim Ibn Asim Abu Asim. I got you all the Qurans. They all say the same thing. All of them. On this verse, they're all the same. Yeah, man, Nasir, you're getting really bad. You know what? But, instead of saying stuff like this, you should bring an argument. جيب حجة اثبت إني أنا غلطان. هات دليل, هات برهان إني أنا غلطان. Prove to me that I'm wrong. Prove to me that I'm wrong. So, anyway, I played for you. I wanted to play for you some of what Nasir said. He sent messages and, yeah, okay. Jesus help me. Jesus forgive me. Jesus come into my heart. We don't know if we have today or tomorrow. Come to him before it's too late. All right. I love you guys. Thank you for being with me.